would ask for approval of the agenda by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Fay. Discussion?
Should I move to
Mr.
amend
Smith,
the agenda now or after the?
why don't you wait till we adopt the agenda and then we will amend it. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Now, if you want to.
Yes, I'd like to move to amend the agenda to include under new business this resolution that you have on the desk proposing to be built to about regarding rock salt. We'll discuss that more later.
Okay, and that resolution is opposing Assembly Bill A 7919 and Senate Bill S 3908, an act to amend the state finance law, the general municipal law, the public authorities law, and highway in relation to enacting the New York State Buy American Salt Act. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Oh, I didn't get a second. I'm sorry. Mr. Fay, Mr. Reagan. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We'll move on with start the meeting with the public health report. Julie Munger and one resolution, which is authorizing the chair to sign an amendment to the contract. I'm under another time. And I'm trying.
I really just think about it. Yeah,
Listen to you guys.
frustrating you.
I need to have the approval of the minutes. Mr. Sheridan, second, Mr. Smith, it's all in favor? Any opposed? All right, moving along to public health and children. I repeat, authorizing the chair to sign an agreement to the contract with Health Research Incorporated for epidemiology and laboratory capacity reopening schools. Seconded by Ms. Curran. Jolene?
Thank you. So this resolution is to give us a no-cost extension for a grant that was set to expire July 21st. So the original grant was for $3,407,799. So far, we have spent $762,563. For the remainder of the money, we are now going to be working with the school districts on different items that could be used to mitigate COVID within the schools. We will be holding some of the money back in case the testing mandate becomes a mandate again. The current one does expire at the end of June, but we want to be able to support the schools if it does come back for the fall. But we will also be working with the schools to either help get updated air filters, cleaning supplies, anything for COVID mitigation.
Any questions? Comment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. You have an update for us for the public health fellows, Julie?
Yes. So I also have Anne Marie Snell here with me, if anybody has questions for her as well. So I'm going to share my screen because I do have just some slides for you. So with the New York State Public Health Core Fellow Program is one that we introduced to you as legislators last year. We have not been able to do anything with it as of yet. However, we are able to start now, and we are hoping to get some fellows in starting around the 1st of July. The grant runs through July 31st of next year. So we'd be looking for fellows for a 12 to 13 month time period. And the fellows will gain the public health experience, and they also have to complete a program through Cornell University for public health essentials. Governor Cuomo is the one that originally developed this program as a way to garner interest in the healthcare workforce. So far, we've had 3 positions approved for our department, and the fellows within our department will be working on community health data analysis, fiscal grant management, public and provider education, and then collaboration with external shareholders. For our partnership synergy, we work with the St. Lawrence Health Initiative, currently on Partners for Overdose Prevention, Bridge to Wellness Coalition, including the Community Health Assessment and our Community Health Improvement Plan. And it's currently a planning year for those two programs, which sets a 5-year plan for both of our groups. We work with them on the Immunization Coalition, Suicide Awareness Coalition, Cancer Prevention, and Public Health Education. So the Health Initiative, we are looking to give 2 fellows from our grant to the St. Lawrence Health Initiative, and the 2 positions currently under review by the fellowship program would include activities to include collaboration with external stakeholders, business plan development, to maintain an educational social media presence, and assist with the development of PSAs. So with that, the St. Lawrence Health Initiative and the Public Health Department have really worked in partnership on a lot of different programs. And the biggest one that we would be working together with underneath the fellowship program is really that community health assessment and the community health improvement plan. And that really does have a huge impact on our Article 6 work and the activities that we work with all of those coalitions that I provided. And Anne Marie is here as well. She is the executive director for the St. Lawrence Health Initiative. And we really just wanted to bring this to you. I'll be bringing a resolution to you at the Finance Committee meeting, authorizing us to sign an MOU with the St. Lawrence Health Initiative for this because it is our grant. But the work by giving the fellows to the St. Lawrence Health Initiative, they would still have their direct supervisor be our department, specifically our new deputy director, Carly Zimmerman, underneath Anne Marie. So just wanted to put that out there, see if anybody had questions for myself or Anne Marie about the fellowships or what type of work they might be working on. It's one of those rare opportunities that we get to give like people to actual help, from the public health department into other organizations. So we're pretty excited.
Okay, does Anne Marie have anything to present to start off with, or are we just gonna?
I will just end with saying Jolene shared it all, but I'm so incredibly grateful for our partnership with the Public Health Department and St. Lawrence County government as a whole. And we're very appreciative for this additional support. So thank you.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
The next resolution comes from Community Services, and it's authorizing an intergovernmental transfer for an upper payment limit and modifying the 2022 budget for Community Services. Moved by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Reagan. Go ahead, Jay.
All right, good evening and thank you. So this is at least the 3rd year that we've entered into this financial transaction with the Department of Health. So really it's if we match the non-federal dollars, which is $55,852, they will return that amount plus that same amount of the federal share. So we've done this at least 3 years in a row. And this is particularly for Article 31, 32, which would be mental health and addictions clinics operated, standalone operated clinics run by county facilities.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next resolution is accepting donations to St. Lawrence County Community Services Addiction Services Program. Moved by Mr. Smithers, seconded by Ms. Kerr. Go ahead, David.
So this is a resolution accepting a donation it was kind of vetted through the American Legion Post 68 in Norwood, but it's an annual, this was the 10th annual Dustin Berger Memorial ATV ride. And this year they opted to use the proceeds or the money that was donated for this for a friend of Dustin's who is Clyde Baxter, who lost his life to addiction treatment. So this is specifically for the addiction clinics.
Any discussion?
Then we also received, we also received $100 again in our honor of Case Baxter from the Vermont Railroad.
Thank you. Any discussion? Tony, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to dovetail a little bit off that. I spoke to this the weekend after it happened, and obviously, I'm very supportive of the trail system. And this particular weekend, this group that were kind enough and generous enough to donate $4,000 to the county addiction had nearly 200 ATVs and UTVs registered for this event. And not only did they donate $4,000, but they did what we hope all folks are doing on the trail system. They were out there, they were spending money in the community. That same weekend, the club out of Brazier that I'm a part of had a fundraiser as well and donated $2,000 to the Helena Fire Department. That very same weekend, we had 178 machines in the run. So again, I not to get away from Jay's, but just wanted to give the trail system a plug there. That was just one weekend, and in one small area that was over 400 machines donating money, spending money in the community. It's a success story all the way around. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony. Moving to the next resolution, which is authorizing the chair. Vote. All in favor of the preceding accepting donations, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Next resolution of authorizing the chair to sign an agreement with Drug Scan for use of a centrifuge device for community service. Moved by Mr. Earl, second amendment to Perkins. Go ahead, Jay.
All right, this last resolution is authorizing the chair to sign an agreement with Drug Scan, who was formerly ACM Labs. They changed their name for us to be able to use a centrifuge device as we are moving towards doing in-house blood draws so that we are able to better receive the lab work that is necessary, particularly with people that are on psychotropic medication injections, as well as medicated assisted treatment for opioid use disorder. A lot of times, the way we had it set up before, it wasn't a direct link or sync to the electronic health record, so we simply gave them laboratory slips, and oftentimes they never really followed through with getting the labs done. So this should hopefully close the loop on that. There's no cost to county, ACM, or Drug Scan. They bill the insurances for this service. So we're asking authorization to sign this agreement.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And you have some updates for us, Jay, go right ahead.
Okay. So this is for the month of May, clinic updates. As you recall, our call reminder system was down for approximately 2 months. So we did ask the vendor if they would reimburse us for those 2 months of payment, which they did. That came to about $1,100 that we did not have to pay. Howbeit, we do think it did affect our productivity during that period. It came back online about the 3rd week in May. So it still affected, possibly still affected this month's productivity and numbers. But there was a drop in the addiction services visits this month. And some of that is people aren't doing well and people are returning to use. So a lot of people are opting not to participate in counseling when they do return to use. So that's one of the reasons why we have our peers that are kind of the boots in the ground trying to re-engage some of these individuals and get them back in treatment. But in terms of the visit average, it actually went up. If you combined on the top right-hand corner, it went up. It was 5.68, so it went up slightly. So we were kind of flat there. And again, the weighted face-to-face last month was 64.7. That dropped to 57.7. The prescriber visits improved slightly, but they wax and wane depending on the cancellation no-show rate. The average this month was 9.3. Last month it was 8.6. In terms of the wait lists, we have 7 that are on the wait list for addiction services. Last month it was 16. And again, of those 7, they are scheduled appointments, but it is beyond the 5-day window required by OASIS. And then the mental health, actually now we have 2 on the wait list, yes, 2 on the wait list. But we were able to get that down from last month, which was 18, because we had one of our counselors move from the addiction side over to the mental health side. So we were continuing to build her caseload. That in a combination of when people get discharged, clinicians are reassigned new individuals. We do have a pending resignation of one of our mental health counselors that we're going to have to look at that caseload and either redistribute it or refer that out to other agencies. I started making calls to the partner providers and see who has the capacity to maybe take some additional cases if we can't meet this need in-house. In terms of services provided, individuals served, it went down a little bit in the month of February. I don't really have any particular reason why that is. And then the bill and paid percentages slightly dipped, but pretty consistent across the board with previous months.
Any questions? Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay, I know I've asked you this before on the build in page percentages.
Yep.
I know you had a couple reasons for the paid percentages and why they weren't being paid. I was just wondering if you could put those in our future reports, break it down so we know what they are, what the percentages are, whether it's Medicaid, no insurance, or whatever it may be.
I will do my best, yes.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Burke?
Jay, do we use overtime when the demand is high, or in the case where we may be losing somebody?
We have spoken to some of the clinicians, particularly on the mental health side, about that. At that time, they were not very interested in doing that. The first 5 hours would not be overtime. It would just be straight time pay. But I mean, I think they already have fairly high caseloads. So there wasn't a lot of interest in that. I mean, I can circle back around and see if that attitude has changed, but when we addressed that several months ago, that was not of interest.
Is the same on the substance abuse side, Jay?
I don't believe we've offered that because we've had a little more capacity on that side than we do on the mental health side. The wait list has never been as large on that side of the clinic compared to the mental health side.
But the individual you're losing is on the substance abuse side, Jay?
No, that individual is on the mental health side.
Mental health side, sorry. Yep.
And we also
Thank you.
lost another counselor, but it doesn't affect clinic per se. She was part of the child and family support team that we get reinvestments monies for. So we don't bill for any of those services because it's state funded. And that's a 2-person team, meaning 1 therapist and then a family peer advocate. So we did lose the therapist. So we're also looking to recruit that position as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
So I can give a brief update on the OTP clinic if you would like. All right, so we have a tentative start date for that, and it's going to be like a soft open, I guess you would call that, for July 18th. So we are currently got approval from all 3 regulatory agencies. So that task is behind us. We're still waiting on the installation of the sink, and that's a work in progress. I think they're soon going to be wrapping that up. We have approximately 30 patients that we're going to be slowly funneling into that program once we do open. Credo has also reached out indicating that they would want to transfer some of their clients, I think it's around 14 clients, into our program. So, we're planning to kind of, when we open, handle those that are internal and possibly those from Credo before we push too much, so to speak, with trying to solicit patients from other community partners that prescribe addiction services. We are short a nurse, so we got word from Oasis that they won't allow us to open unless we secure a second nurse, because if you have one nurse and something happens to that nurse, then we would not have the ability to dispense. So we're in the process. We've had several interviews. We've had some people or some individuals that are more interested in per diem work. So there's possibility of maybe piecemealing that together with part-time individuals. And then we have 2 more interviews this week. So we're hoping that we can get somebody to come on board.
Question.
So additionally, we are planning to go live with our new electronic health record in the middle of July as well. So we've been doing quite a bit of work with 1011. We're now working in the live environment in terms of doing what they call the data dumps, which is all the demographic information from our current caseloads. We're confirming that all the clinical forms that are converted over in the live environment. Some of those we still have to do, I guess you'd say, from scratch. So we have about 15 forms that we have yet to put into the new live version. The e-prescribe system that they use, we're setting up our prescribers this week for that. And again, we're already interfaced with ACM labs, as well as the Ability Clearinghouse. We've got that interface all set up, and staff have all been trained on the use of the new electronic health record. So hopefully we will be able to move forward with that as well.
Any questions regarding that topic? None, Jay.
All right.
Anything else?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to point out too that Mr. Forsythe is absent tonight. He's been excused. We move on to social services now, and Luann is going to give us a rundown on children's service.
Good evening. So this is May's services data for the Orange County Department of Social Services. As usual, we'll begin with Child Protective Services. For the month of May, we received 179 new referrals or reports. This compared to 180 from last month, so similar numbers there. We saw an additional 400 children as a result of those 179 referrals. And I would know by this morning, we had received approximately 110 new reports for the month of June, just as an additional piece of information. So our indication rate for April was 11%. We went up slightly to 13% for the month of May. Our overall yearly average is 16%. I believe that we will continue to see the indication rate be under that 15 or 16% with the new state central registry reform that we've talked about previously, with the increase in the burden of proof to a fair preponderance of the evidence as opposed to some credible evidence. If we look at our safety checks for Child Protective Services for the month of April, because the state is a month behind, they received 98% completion rate for safety check. And again, this is inputting the information that's gathered from face-to-face contacts, lateral contacts, and other fact gathering into the New York State system and having supervisor approval within 7 days. So moving on. The second month in a row, Child Protective Services caseload remains an average of 24 investigations per CPS worker. So we are seeing a little more consistency being below that 26 number that we saw for several months. The total number of cases for Child Protective Services did go up to 683 for the month of May, compared to 660 for the month of April. I believe this is direct result of 2 consistent months of about 179, 180 reports each month. 121 cases were closed in the month of May. If we look at individual units, just a couple of points. 3856, the first unit, the supervisor is noted on the bottom as a worker. The caseload is 0 because the supervisors do not typically carry caseloads in Child Protective Services. The average caseload for the first unit is approximately 19 cases. Looking at the second unit, 5478. This is our new worker or training unit. So we do have some staff that are in what we call the training pod that are overseen by the senior worker and supervisor in that unit as well. And that average caseload in that unit is 19 also. Unit or worker number 7636 in that unit actually resigned as a 527 and is no longer with us. Moving on to unit 6035. The supervisor in that unit had some cases, they were all able to be closed. There's 0 caseload for that supervisor as of last month. Unit 7255, the average caseload in that unit is about 25. And unit number 2942 is the Augsburg unit. We have a new CPS supervisor in that unit who has over 20 years of experience in child welfare. They moved into that position from the foster care preventive side of the house. The average caseload in that unit is 25 investigations per worker. We look at our training period and the 4 individuals that we had in training at the end of this past month. They'll be completing training September and prior to September and October. And actually worker number 8663 did not make it through probationary period. So when we look at cases closed, just a few notes that we have some folks who have closed a large number of cases. And in addition, last month, several workers closed 7 cases. Worker 7324, for example, closed 10 cases last month. For this month, 14 cases. So large numbers of cases being closed by some of the workers across the board in all of the units. Looking at preventive services or foster care services, last month the department was happy to report the number of children in care was now below 300. It continues. For May, there were 286 youth in care. 16 are home on child basis with family. There are 167 children. Actually, excuse me, there is a correction on this report, so it should be 144 that are in kinship relative homes. So there are 144 children placed in kinship foster homes with relatives or individuals that are considered to have a significant relationship, and 16 are home on a trial basis, so they remain in the custody of St. Lawrence County. However, are home with family being monitored through the court system. So the net change, we had 296 youth in care in April, 14 were removed from care and 4 were added, with a new total of 286. We look at the average number of children in care continues to decrease. So far this year, we are at 300. Last month, we were at 304 for our average. We look at average days in care. Unfortunately, the average number of days in care for children did go up again from 767 to 771 overall. If we remove long stayers or a youth that are considered hard to place, or those that are over 14 that do not wish to be adopted that remain in care, the average number of days in care for foster youth did decrease from 719 to 700 days in care. The average preventive caseload, preventive services are those services that are provided to families which children are at risk of out-of-home placement. Services work to support and empower the families by focusing on their natural resources and strengths within the family unit. So referrals are made to specific services and programs to address the issues that place the children at risk and brought the family to the attention of the department. The average caseload last month was 12. Or excuse me, April was 12, last month was 11. So if we look at the individual units, unit 6053 is a foster care preventive unit. There is a new worker that started May 31st in the training pod for this particular unit. Unit 660 is also a foster care preventive unit. And you'll see a new worker in that unit that started to pick up some cases. Units 6336, that is a new supervisor that transitioned to the adolescent unit as a result of our long-term supervisor who transitioned into the Child Protective Services supervisory role. We have one in the training pod that will complete training in mid-July for that unit. Unit 5748. We have a senior caseworker noted in that unit 3582. That caseworker's actual responsibilities include home study review, adoption case review, recruitment, interstate contact for the placement of children review, all the updated clearances and backgrounds for adoption and home study records, also reviewing the home finding records, and they supervise 2 of the homemakers. Looking at their wider caseload. One adoption case. Unit 3660 is our adoption unit, and you'll see we had some adoptions this past month. So some cases were shuffled around. In our home finding units, which is 1998, they are in the Augsburg location. The third home finder completed training, so some of the homes have shifted from the 2 homemakers to spread out more evenly across all 3. We saw a net reduction of 6 foster homes for St. Lawrence County. The average number of children receiving the in-home services did decrease again from 163 to 161. And we have 2 individuals in the training period for foster care preventive that will complete in July and by September. An update on DSS employees certified and the number of placements that they have in foster homes. We have 3 St. Lawrence County employees that are certified as foster parents, with 0 St. Lawrence County youth placed in their home. We did have 1 employee, as you may recall, that transferred employment, and others chose to close their home. We have 1 DSS employee that is certified that has a relative placement from an out-of-county placement. We have 4 vacancies that remain in foster care preventive, and interviews are being held this week. Adoption activity. You may recall we had an adoption day event in May during which 9 children were adopted and are now legally part of their forever home. We have the 76 in that last column. It's actually a combination of 56 plus 20, so it should actually read 56. So we have 56 youth that are free for adoption, and we have 20 youth free without an adoptive resource. We had 9 adopted for the month of May. We also have approximately 24 packets that have been filed with the family court for adoption, awaiting review and scheduling. For our foster care placement, as previously mentioned, the family first requirements continue to be met, which include that we have greater than 50% of our youth placed relative placements. St. Lawrence County currently has 57%, and that we are under 12%, which is the New York State requirement, but St. Lawrence County has been more restrictive, and we implemented into our family first plan that we be under 8%. We are currently at 6% for institutional placement. So the agency continues to meet the federal New York State requirements and standards for family first. If we look at eligibility programs, there was overall an increase in individual and family supplemental nutrition assistance program and temporary assistance cases, an increase in key individual cases, and a decrease in family home energy assistance program cases. An update on the emergency rental assistance program: 365 applications have been paid to 246 individual landlords for a total of $2,175,685 as of the first week in June. It is anticipated that additional landlords will receive payments for applications that have been received through March 31st, 2022. An additional note from our child support and collection unit, the collections were up by $3,000 this month. However, down overall this year as compared with last year by 6%. And it is noted that this is likely due to the result of last year's unemployment and stimulus payments that were sent out. That's all I have for the services data.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Akers.
Thank you, Heather. Are there any scheduled for June adoptions? Do we do this monthly or do we skip months or?
We don't want to skip months. It's the court's calendar. So we, they tell us when the adoption will be scheduled, and our legal department is very proactive and have to ensure those happen as quickly as possible.
Is that a question, Mr. Button? Do you know who's on tap or how many more children we have available?
I know the adoption unit has been spectacular. They're moving the petitions along as quickly as they possibly can. I did have meetings this past week with 2 members of the family court system, identified that I was concerned that we had a growing number of packets that were sitting there waiting. Part of the problem that I think they face is that once the packet is filed and finalized on our end and they've reviewed the packet, it takes an outside attorney to actually prepare up the materials on behalf of the adoptive parent. There are very few attorneys in 2 that are active. Those attorneys have not been moving them along at the pace that we would really enjoy or like them to be doing. In speaking to the family court this week, like I said, I spoke to 2 individuals at the family court. They have proposed that we have another adoption day. We are going to, I believe, shoot for October to have another adoption day. Those petitions and packets that are filed right now, we will try to piecemeal and put in. The docket associated with the family court is quite busy right now. But we're going to try to get those squeezed in July and in August, moving those along with the expectation that those new packets that are filed between now and August would be at the October date. There's really, under the law, there's a 90-day turnaround time period that they're supposed to be targeting. They are aware of it. They are trying to move on it. But like I said, there's sort of a confluence of factors that are impacting their ability to move them along in the way that they want to. These 24 vast majority of them were filed between January and some have been sitting there for quite a while. We'd like them to move along.
So some of these adoptions are very, require a lot of time. So Henry Leader is one, and I think one was that, the one that I attended. So this burden, actually, the cost of this is actually on those that are adopting, correct?
To a certain extent, there are subsidies associated with adoption. There are subsidies associated with the foster care itself. So to a certain extent, yes, they do have an expense associated with it. But my understanding is that the cost is not the prohibitive issue. My understanding that really it's largely a time commitment. It is a rather daunting project. Once again, our adoption unit has been spectacular. They have really moved them along, and we've been in fairly constant contact about continuing to move the packets along. I have every reason to believe that they have no intention of slowing down. And next month, when I think when Heather appears before you, you'll see the numbers have increased once again because they are moving at the pace that they are. I believe that the court is aware of the problem. I believe that they are trying to move things along, but I think that the problem is confluence of several.
Thank you.
Ms. Hager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may direct my question to Mr. Button. I was contacted by a constituent who said that she had waited 3 years. And I understand COVID did put the court in a position. So you're saying the bottleneck is more in the court than in our ESS legal, right?
I feel relatively certain that the bottleneck is not with us. The packets that can move along are moving along. As you can see, the number of individuals that are freed for adoption is increasing rapidly. The number of children in care is decreasing rapidly. So the bottleneck does not appear to be at the DSS unit or in DSS in the county attorney's office with respect to legal. The bottleneck appears to be at the court. I don't know that it's really fair to say that court itself is the problem, though, given the impact that the outside attorneys play or the role they play with respect to moving the petitioning process along.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mr. Burke.
I have a question, Heather, on the average CPS caseload. What goes into calculating the average? Do we have many caseworkers that are being averaged in that are under 15?
So when we determined what the average is, we're looking at the total number of cases and any worker who is able to start taking investigations. So those in the training period that have not completed the statutory requirements to actually be able to take and work on an investigation does not be included.
I guess my question is, as we look at the average, is there anything that's skewing that average downwards? I would wonder how many caseworkers we have that have 30 on their caseloads, how many that have 35. Are there people that have that many on their caseloads?
Yes, so if you look at the individual units, you will see that some folks have caseloads in the 30s. A couple of workers may have caseloads in the low 40s. And then you will see some workers who have under 10, for example, a new worker who may have just started receiving reports. So yes, there is a wide range.
So there must be a number of people that have lower caseloads that you're just not comfortable enough to give them a higher number. Is that accurate?
Yes, it's a combination of factors. One would be where they are in the training process, not just completing the actual required training, but how well they are able to put the training into use. Everybody's starts in a different place and their comfortability in the field. You'll hear from our senior trainer, Chris Chandler, but we spend some time with folks in the field as well, seeing, how comfortable they are in the field, how well they can engage folks, and also the types of cases that come in. So completing the mandatory required training does not necessarily include sex abuse interviewing or other type of forensic interviewing. So they would not necessarily receive certain types of cases when they first start taking cases.
Well, I guess my question is, when caseworkers get up around the 30 or 35, we're talking about double the amount that the state recommends. How are we doing as far as recruitment?
We have 2 open positions in Child Protective Services. One as a result of someone who was terminated during their probationary period just recently. One is a vacancy that you will see tonight as a result of a resignation. So we have 2 Child Protective vacancies and 4 in training. And actually, we had someone start, I believe, on the June 14th as well. 2 started on June 14th as well. But we won't see on this report, but we will see on next month's report. So what we are doing is a combination of things. We take these senior workers and we team them with an individual who has a really high caseload and help them be able to reduce the caseloads. We take them off of reports for a week so that they're able to work on the documentation and the dictation that's required in order to be able to work towards closing cases. We do a combination of things to try to assist individuals with those higher caseloads.
Is there, I guess, maybe just a general question, for your department and maybe for Ruth, is there a level at which we think that we have exceeded the comfort of what people are able to do? Again, I'm sure that those senior people are very competent, but when they're twice or over twice the recommended state allowance, and here's the other thing: we don't have any assurance that the new people you're hiring are going to stay. Typically, turnover has been fairly high. I guess I'm wondering, is there light at the end of this tunnel?
I think I had answered a question similar to that before. I think that there is. We have 4 people, one unfortunately that did not make it. So we have 3 currently in this report in training. We have 2 that we have hired since June 1st that are also in training. Again, it's going to take time to bring folks on board, to get them trained, and experience takes even more time. But one of the things that we have done is with the 2 training senior caseworkers, they do not have a caseload. So when I say that we team or partner them with somebody with a higher caseload, I don't want to say it's like splitting the caseload in half, but essentially, if they're working with them, that is a big sense of relief because they're not bringing their own cases into that situation as well. It's not a long-term solution, but it may be a temporary solution to try to help reduce those numbers. Or when you refer to a number, a cutoff number, the grade A supervisor in Child Protective Services works very closely with the numbers every day to make sure that folks that are getting a number that is too high of open cases that they're taking off report and really focus on all the work that needs to be done to close the cases out that are able to be closed.
Again, Heather, I hope I don't come across as being critical of what you do. I think you've done a wonderful job, but I guess I'm wondering, as the organization, as our organization is concerned, are we doing enough to address these deficits and staffing? And you don't have to answer that, but thank you, Heather.
Mr. Akers.
So Heather, last year, we provided you with 20 additional positions, right? 10 in protective and 10 in preventative. And it looks like the caseload in the one area is a little bit lower than what the other side is doing. Can they be cross-trained, do the other job?
They all are.
They all are, okay. So you have actually 2 openings right now. That's the extent of your openings of those 20 positions.
2 in EPS, 4 in foster care preventive.
Okay, so we still have 6 openings. So 6 openings. It's not like the county has been negligent in actually providing funding or opportunities for you to do this. If the position is about, or the problem is actually filling those positions. The fact that we have 2 recent hires, 3 in training, 1 who didn't make it, so we still have 5. You have 5 in training and 6 open positions. So in all likelihood, if we get those 11 positions functioning and operating, those caseloads will dramatically decrease. So I just want to point out to the public, it's not that the resources haven't been provided, it's getting people to fill those positions. And so I think county's done, your requests have been fulfilled. Now, if we can just get people to take those jobs, I think we'll be onto a better footing. Thank you.
Ms. Hager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very quickly, Heather, did you say under adoption activity that from May 22, that should have been 56 instead of 76?
Yes,
Okay.
it's 56 or the 76s, but there are the 20 in addition to that. So that would be the total of 76.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Reagan.
I'd like to direct this to the commissioner.
Sir.
How is the effort to educate the career planning and placement people at SUNY Canton and SUNY Potsdam and the other colleges about the fact that we have positions available for college graduates?
That conversation is actually ongoing. I have reached out to their career counselors at both schools. Provide them some information, trying to get involved on their upcoming career days and those types of things. So we can get that message out there. I'm actually reaching out to all 4 of the local colleges to see if we can tap into that resource.
Yeah, I think that I think the county's personnel department needs to be working more closely with the career planning and placement office to make the kids who are graduating from college aware that there are jobs right here in St. Lawrence County, because I know, that's a very stressful time for young people as they try to figure out what they're going to do. And too often they think, this is a great place to live, but unfortunately I can't have a career here in St. Lawrence County. And I think we offer a lot of very interesting jobs, but I think that we don't do enough to get that information into the hands of the people who can put it in front of the young people as to what is available, whether it's the health department or any other agency that we have in county government.
I agree, sir, and that's why I have reached out. We actually, they had their career day for SUNY Canton just shortly after, right around the time I came on board. So we missed out on. I want to take every opportunity. We can get some planning done over the summer when the schools are back in session. I want to hit it hard.
So we did, the county did participate in in that career day.
I can't speak to that, that was like.
We did. Please.
So I believe we had one department, I believe social services was represented there. But I am happy to share that this Thursday, 8 to 4, we'll be having a job fair at the Human Services Center with county departments represented and a lot of folks available to speak about the jobs that we provide with the county. So they'll be set up outside the departments on both levels.
And what are we doing to get people?
Advertising's gone out and we have a flyer that's being shared with the schools to send out to the folks that they can circle in touch with. Johnny is present here and can speak in more detail. That's acceptable.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. So yes, June 30th, 8 to 4, going to be in the Human Services Building. We targeted, we put a special target flyers out and phone actual phone contacts with the schools and the colleges. So they all got the flyers, they all got personal phone calls. And our advertisement on those flyers was for current high school students, current college students, and college and high school graduates.
Thank you.
So I suggested earlier, I don't know if Mr. Seaver, if you were here or not. There was a pile of kids that go to SUNY Potsdam that actually go for early childhood education. And the Watertown paper is listed to the recent graduates. I would suggest that a first class letter be sent to each one of those individuals directly to their home, not banking on them coming to a job fair, and actually sending them a letter that there's an opportunity for employment here in the county, right to their home. And I think, you know, several of these individuals, they would all are hoping to get a job at a school or whatever. But there's a pile of applicants, you know, for elementary positions. I mean, at the Madrid-Waddington board, when I was on there, we get 100 kids. And so we would actually try, you know, and sift through that, trying to find somebody that graduated from Madrid-Waddington. And there usually were several, and tried to, you know, bring the cream to the top. I think if we send a letter directly to those individuals that live here in St. Lawrence County, that there's an opportunity for this, we will get bites. Rather than, you know, a broad spectrum job fair that they may have missed, if it's not on Facebook or whatever social media that they're actually participating in, they're not picking up the paper. You know, they're not seeing it. They're not going to see it there. They may see it in North Country this week, but the reality is young people are going to find it on Reddit or Facebook, Instagram, probably. So that's what I would suggest. Go right to their homes. You know, what are you out? What's the first class stamp is what, 55 cents? Form letter. Hey, we're interested. I'll Heather at her home.
Yeah, your cell number.
Well, I hate to say it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Mr. Akers. That's a great idea. And there are a lot of people that don't want to go into teaching right now. For reasons. This is an alternative with the same sort of skill set in a way. Great idea. Thank you.
You have anything else? I have a question. Early on in your presentation, you mentioned that you had one, I believe, a CPS worker that was certified for having these children in their homes. Or did I misread that?
So we have 3 employees of St. Lawrence County Department of Social Services who are certified as policy parents. One of those individuals has a child, but the child is not a child from St. Lawrence.
So with respect to those 3, and particularly with the one that you're referring to, where does your certification come from?
Their certification is from St. Lawrence County.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
I have a question, Joe.
Under your pardon? Yes, John.
It's actually for Johnny. I was wondering, Johnny, the turnover rate now and any insight as to why people are leaving?
I don't have the turnover rate in my hand right now. I can get you that. I can send that out to you. The reasons that we've had in the past, and I can't say they're directly with case workers, but they didn't give us any kind of insight as to something specific with DSS. I know that, but I can also send out those answers as well. Again, the exit interviews answers that we have. I did want to point out though that our recruiting, our numbers for the exam, for the caseworker exam that we give every 6 months are not bad. We are getting the applicants. We have a number. We always have a list of candidates on there. So the recruiting, I don't think is as much of a problem as people tend to think it is, because our numbers are good. And they've increased over the years, honestly. So I think it's more to do with, you know, the type of work and the load. That's what I hear.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Chris Chandler, the senior caseworker, and we're going to update us on caseworker training. Mr. Chandler.
So one of the things I think that we started to see last month when Karen Durham had social welfare examiner joined us was an interest on the commissioner's behalf of focusing and continuing to educate. So we had shared some information about some of the different units throughout the last year, and we hadn't seen that information making its way out into the public. So we wanted to make sure that you get information, and today we're going to be focusing on caseworker training. The board obliged the request and provided the opportunity for the positions as legislator spoke to. However, inside of those 21 positions, 10 of those were set aside for training pools. You also went one step further and authorized those to be kept full. So there isn't the vacancy review committee, there isn't the annual or the monthly resolution that provides for those positions to have to wait to be filled. So those, when someone, as Heather described in her report tonight, someone didn't make it through, they don't have to wait another month to 45 days to bring someone in. They can go right ahead and fill it. So the vacancy over here, we turn that around, and those folks who come into that training pool, well, Chris oversees that. Chris?
Thank you. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Christopher Chandler, and I'm a senior caseworker at DSS. Between my employment at the department and previous jobs, I have approximately 10 years of experience working in the child welfare field. Training has always been an interest of mine, and I've taken on a training role in some capacity in most of the positions that I've had over the years. For example, I've previously completed basic advocacy training through Rutgers University, which included a 9-course curriculum on engaging families, safety planning, and overcoming the challenges to change, amongst other topics. I later facilitated trainings for new staff entering the human services field using those skills. I also previously completed MANT trainings through another employer, which teaches a comprehensive approach to preventing, de-escalating, and intervening when necessary if behaviors pose a threat of harm to self or others. As many of you know, this is something that can be very useful for myself and the rest of our staff. I'm also one of the individuals that developed the new training curriculum for child welfare staff at the department. So last week marks our first year since we started the new training process at the department. Since that time, we've hired 35 caseworkers. 25 of them are actually still with us today. So we are doing pretty good with the retention rate moving forward. As Heather mentioned, there are 6 vacancies currently, 2 in child protective services and 4 in foster care preventive. And the civil service test for that was just given last month. And as Heather also mentioned, there's interviews ongoing. So you might ask yourself, it's been a year, how are things going? What's going well? What are we still working on? So I wanted to touch on a few of those things. So the first thing I want to talk about tonight is one of the first things that we focused on really in developing the new training curriculum is a sense of consistent training for everyone. So when I first started, for example, it wasn't just let's see and get you to where you need to be. It was, oh, you came in, you're a body, so here's a full piece of it. Good luck with this. Thankfully, that's something that we are working to improve on. there isn't so much of the sink or swim mentality that we used to have. And while we haven't hit that mark of being fully staffed yet, one of the things we have seen through all of the positions that the board has approved, and as we're filling them, we have had some scenarios of where we've had people far enough along in the training process that when another staff has left, they've been able to take on some of those cases versus having to give those to everyone else and double their caseload, for example. So we have seen some of those things. And while there are requirements for child welfare staff to complete the New York City Office of Children and Family Services Foundations and Child Protective Trainings that last approximately 6 to 7 weeks, completion of those doesn't mean that we just give them a caseload when they're done. So that's something that Heather touched a little bit on a little while ago as well, is everyone's training looks a little bit different. We all learn at different paces, everyone has different strengths, different needs that they have. So one of the things that we also do to provide that consistent training for everyone is, like Heather mentioned, everyone is fostering across the board, regardless if they're going to foster care prevention, they're going to child protective services. They all get that New York State offices training. They all go out with veteran casework staff from each of those units to observe what that looks like. They get to lead and facilitate home visits on their own, regardless of what unit they're in, for each of those different scenarios as well. And throughout that process, there's either myself or our other senior trainer from the training unit that are not only reviewing what we're going out on and what we're seeing, but we're also looking at what things do we see that they can still use improvement on. So one of the things that the other senior trainer and our grade B supervisor have also implemented is skills-based clinics here locally. So as we know, COVID is COVID and a lot of things became virtual. So in my opinion, training is always better in person. The state is back at all of their training being virtual. So it's hard to do that. Many of you have been through our building and you can imagine sitting at one of the desks on the 3rd floor trying to participate in the training, right? So one of the things that we did is we started scheduling skills-based clinics where the other senior caseworker, the grade B supervisor, and I are actually giving real life examples of here's a child protective services report that came in, and we're role playing with them in a safe setting. This is contacting the source, and we actually call that source with us as the source and go through that scenario. It's a safe setting. You don't have to worry about slipping up on things. You can give that real-time feedback of what we're seeing based on that. We also do those same things when it comes to completing global assessments of things. So for a caseworker coming in, it's very easy, especially if someone is coming in fresh out of college or they don't have a background in human services, to become tunnel vision. And it's the report is on educational neglect or lack of supervision. So we go out to that home and that's all we focus on. So the idea behind a global assessment is we're assessing for safety overall, not just if it comes in on ed neglect. We're not just looking at educational neglect. We're looking at all of these other things that can be happening in the home as well. So as part of our skills-based clinics, we also role play those scenarios and get them comfortable with completing global assessments. And it's not a simple yes or no question for everyone. It's coming up, being able to think on their feet and come up with those follow-up questions. Another thing that we've noticed with the consistent training piece is going back to, like I mentioned, when I first started, here's this caseload. So one of the things now is prior to a new caseworker receiving any cases of their own, they have to be cleared through either myself or the other senior trainer that they've progressed far enough through training, their documentation is where it needs to be. They've demonstrated the ability to do these global assessments, to do these source calls, to have the collateral contacts. So we have had some examples where we've had some of our staff that have been around a while try to, okay, here's this case for you. But now we have myself and the other senior trainer that also sit in on those meetings. We're like, no, let's back up a minute, we're not there. So that's one of the good things that we have seen. Another thing with the consistent training is in the past, it was easy to look at, okay, you have this state training now, you're good to go, but we don't stop and think about, well, we're going to be transporting kids. Do they all know how to put a car seat in properly? We drug test a lot of the people that we work with. Do they know how to facilitate a drug test in the different types and how to read those? So those are also things that all of our staff coming in get as soon as they come in now as part of our regular process. One of the other things that I mentioned briefly is the real-time feedback for staff. So that's really been beneficial for our staff. Not only are we going out in the field with staff as they come in and talking about them through the role playing or the skills-based clinics, but we also review all documentation that they do. And that goes as far as whether they're out shadowing another caseworker, they come back, they have practice writing those progress notes. Either myself, the grade case supervisor, or the other senior trainer are reviewing every single one of those notes and giving feedback on, okay, here was this, or what about this? And that continues even after they've started receiving cases on a regular basis. One of the three of us are going through and reviewing all of those. Whereas before, it would just be, here's everything in this case until it came time to submit it to close it. And then you have a supervisor trying to review that entire case. And at that point, it's often too late to go back and change things. So we're trying to correct some of those things as they're happening. We also have monthly meetings with all of our new staff as they come in. We call them their monthly probationary meetings. So when a new caseworker comes in, we let them know that every month for that first year of their employment, we have a regular meeting with that worker, myself or the other senior trainer, their immediate supervisor, and the greater supervisor for whichever unit they are in. And during those meetings, we talk about where they're at in the training process, what things they've completed, some of the strengths that we have seen, we do a little bit of writing, we do a little bit of engaging. We talk about some of the areas we need improvement on still, and the trainings we can provide to give them. We also recently started using those meetings as a time for that group of individuals I just mentioned to talk to them about what their long-term goals are. Where do they see themselves in a year? Where do you see yourselves in 5 years? Is there something else we can do to help keep you want to come to work every day and want to stay here? So they're part of those discussions now too. Another thing that I wanted to highlight for the training units is it's easy to focus on all of the new staff coming in. They said we hired 35 in the last year since we started this process. But it's also about going back and retraining some of those staff that we've had. So if we're noticing issues with them, or there's a caseworker that's having their bi-weekly case conferences with their supervisor, and we're seeing a recurring theme of we're always missing this kind of information, and this is what's happening. We're able to pull them back into the training units and kind of refocus on some of them by partnering them either with myself or the other senior trainer. So I can say that we've done that with at least a few individuals since we started this process from both Child Protective and from Foster Care Preventive, and we have received positive feedback on that. You know, maybe it's, I struggle when you have, imagine having 40, 50, 60 cases, how do you prioritize when everything's important? So having someone to sit down with you to go through that and let's focus on this so we can decrease that case load. Some of the other things that we've done for ongoing training for our staff is recorded trainings by either myself or the other senior trainer as well. So our administrative directives or our ADMs, as we call them, they're constantly changing. Basically a directive from the state saying, this is what you're going to do now, but we're not going to take anything away. So some of the things we've done with those is not only create in-person trainings if there are complex issues, but we also have created pre-recorded trainings for some of those things. So you've heard Heather over the last year talk about the family first implications. There's a lot of that. So like I mentioned, we've brought 35 caseworkers in, plus all of the other staff we've already had, we had to get trained on that. So we have individual pre-recorded trainings on every one of those topics that they can watch, and then we can follow up to address any of the things that come up there. The last area I wanted to touch about tonight are, many of you have heard, again, over the last year, Heather and others talking about the agency review that was previously completed as part of our regular process and the performance improvement plan that was developed out of that in collaboration with OCFS. So a couple of the things that were on that plan were really about documentation as a whole, which whether that means progress notes or your family assessment and service plans. You've heard Heather talk a lot about the timely safety assessments and how we've really worked hard to improve that. And we've been consistently above the New York State average with that for over the last year now. So we are addressing those things as well. The progress note piece, for example, after that was put on our performance improvement plan, we required all of our staff, regardless of how long they've been employed there, that are in child welfare, supervisors included, to complete a full day of state-sponsored progress note training. And as part of that, we actually had to, myself included, write a progress note and submit it to representatives from the state who reviewed that progress note and gave us feedback on that. We got a grade on it, we got you demonstrated these skills, or we didn't. So that has happened now. Another area is the involving fathers piece. So it's very easy when you have those high caseloads and things not to make excuses, but when you have a report that comes in and say that report lists mom and 3 kids on it, but maybe dad's not listed on that report. We really need to be doing our diligence to go out there and identify who is dad, where are they at, what is contact look like. So that's another area we've really been trying to improve on. So those same staff that I mentioned, anyone that has been there, regardless of how long it's in child welfare, also has to participate in this involving fathers training about different techniques that we can use to locate these individuals, to find them, to engage them in service planning. Another one was the family assessment and service plan that was added to our performance improvement. That's much like our safety assessments, is they need to be not only completed, but entered into that database in a certain amount of time. So that was something we had to improve upon. And as of a few months ago, the state no longer has that on our improvement plan because we have made enough progress with that at the local level, but that's not needed any longer. We've also completed another mandatory in-person training that I had put together with one of our grade B supervisors on how to complete those assessment and service plans and what type of information should be going into those. One of the other things is now I'm reviewing the majority of those service plans or somebody else in the training unit to make sure that the correct information is going into those rather than trying to backtrack 3 months down the road and pull this shit back in. And then the last piece, like I said, is the safety assessment piece. We really have been working hard on that over the last year or so. As you've seen from the monthly statistics, we're above that state average on a regular basis. Our goal is to continue to improve. Maybe one day we'll hit that 100% mark. So we are implementing new policies and stuff to continue to try to improve that. Many people will look at it and say, you're at 98%, the state average is only 90, isn't that good enough? It's never good enough. Everyone has room to improve. With that, that's all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. That was such a good one. One thing that I picked up on that I think is so important is the timely feedback. Somebody can go along and think you're doing okay with these monthly meetings and specifying what the problems are. That's great. Secondly, you mentioned that you're going out and improving your practice, and I wanted to thank you for that. We're all lifelong learners. As long as you're improving your practice, you're passing that on. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Chris, for that presentation. I've been here almost 12 years. That's the first time I've heard of it. Thank you, Ruth, for bringing this before us. So it's great news about the retention. We're on a good step here towards that. I have a specific question. You mentioned about drug tests. Do they do them in the home? And now that marijuana is legal, are they actually specific to a certain drug or?
We do train our staff to complete these in the home. One of the other things with the drug testing piece is we also work in collaboration with the co-location staff that technically work for St. Lawrence County Addiction Services, but are based out of PSS. So they are trained to do these drug tests in the home. Yes. Sorry.
That's really something.
Yeah.
Sure.
So Ruth had asked me to speak a little bit about co-location since I just mentioned it. So co-location, we have a few staff that work for St. Louis County Addiction Services. They do have that background and training. They are supervised by somebody at the clinic, but they are technically based out of the department's office. So one of the things that's helpful with that is when we get a new child protective report and it has any allegations of drug concerns, one of the first things that caseworker is going to be doing is making a referral to the co-location program. One of those individuals will then reach out to the family and do a mini assessment with them at the house to determine if they do need services or if they can benefit. If they do, that staff being connected to our county clinic is able to set them up with an appointment with whichever clinic is closest to them. They can bring all of the paperwork out, get everything signed so that they can fill out the maps. The co-location staff also help us out a lot with the court-ordered drug testing, which I can say on a positive thing as well with the new judge. We're not seeing anywhere near as many of the court-ordered drug tests as we were. So that is a good thing, but they were the ones helping us to coordinate that. They can help with our random drug screenings. If there was a report of a baby born with a positive toxicology screening, we always include those staff as well who go out and actually work with the family and the caseworker to make an appropriate plan to ensure that that child is safe and their needs are being met. So they do a lot of the drug tests as well. As far as the specific substances that they test for, generally our tests are for a panel of approximately 12 substances. Marijuana is still one of them. We we do have the ability when we send them to the lab versus doing an instant test to add any additional substance that we may need to test for. With the marijuana specifically, a lot of the individuals we work with, especially if they're involved with the court system, court order treats it pretty much the same as alcohol, where it may specifically state in there that you cannot possess, consume, or be under the influence of this unless prescribed by a physician in an amount or manner. So then in those instances, we do require the individuals to show us proof of their medical marijuana card and their actual THC they're getting from the dispensary, what dispensary they're going to, those types of things.
So the second one's a general question, but say you hire a new caseworker, you know, and it's an individual that grew up with two parents in the home, 3 square meals, a warm bed at night, and that they start going to these home visits and they see children that are malnourished or abused. What type of services do we have? Do you have some kind of like, I won't say a soft fuzzy room for them to come home to come to the work with? What type of services are we providing for particularly somebody that's new, that hasn't experienced this before? I don't think that, you know, you're an experienced caseworker. I don't think you ever get immune to it, but certainly you see it, you understand it. I mean, what kind of things are we providing for our new hires or even somebody that's experienced that's been traumatized?
So that's a good question. So there's a couple of parts to that. So one thing we try to do, because that is a very real situation, a lot of people coming in are, for one thing, for example, they're very shocked by what New York State minimum standards are. So they go out to that home, and especially if they have grown up with a traditional family and they see those things. So the first thing is when they're out there, especially if they're still new or they're with another worker, there's always a debrief afterwards in that. If they are out on their own, when they come back, a lot of times they are checking in with either one of the other senior caseworkers, myself, or grade B. We're going over what they saw, what types of things they've seen. In some instances, it goes beyond that. So, for example, we had a caseworker who had a relatively traditional upbringing, and they were reviewing a case history on a case that they had gotten, and there were some pretty traumatizing things in there, and it was too much for them. So they just had a meltdown, they did everything. So we pulled them aside into a private location, had a conversation with them about it, talked them through it. But we do also have licensed mental health counselors that we offer to our staff as well at no cost to them, that we can just give them the contact information for them. They can reach out, say, I work for the Department of Social Services, and they'll schedule them just as if they were a traditional client.
Would they be within community services, or are we going outside because they don't want other county employees to know that they're seeking this help? Or
there is a provider outside of community services.
well, thank you, Chris.
Yep.
Anyone else? Mr. Smithers?
I have some questions. I think you mentioned training not just of new hires, but of people that have been employed. What would bring this about? For this be something that happens routinely, or would it be something that triggers that need for retraining?
Both. So we like to say child welfare is never black and white, it's very gray. So something that can bring that about is if we're seeing a general theme across the majority of our cases, family assessment service plan, part of our review, for example, that's something that we require all of our staff to be retrained on, because that is something we were seeing pretty much across the board with things. On the other side of that, if we've had individuals where they're sitting in either in a permanency planning meeting, or they have a case conference with their supervisor, and that supervisor is asking specific questions that at that point in their training, they should be able to answer. As a caseworker actually having a caseload in the field, there's certain things that they should know. And if they're not doing that, that may be something where one of the trainers is brought into those conversations to talk about what we can do to help get them to where they need to be.
Another question I have is, you mentioned 35 that you knew being trained in the last year, 25 still employed. So my question is, how many caseworkers do we currently have? And I'm just looking for information for the numbers. I know it's just a number, but and how many would that compare to that we had a year ago or 2 years ago?
So as far as the number that we currently have, I don't have the specific. I know it's roughly 25 to 30 in child protective, and then another just over 30, or that's foster care for benefit, 25 to 30, and then in child protective, it's just over 30 if we were fully staffed. So I don't know that exact number. As far as in comparison to where we were a year ago, I don't know if I have that answer for you, because that's a hard question as well, because although we've kept the majority of the staff we've hired, we've also had a lot of staff that have been there for a significant amount of time that left and went elsewhere.
So,
That's good for now.
you want to? Thank you very much. Very detailed and very informative. And which the very percent all we do. So thank you. Moving along to the next resolution. That is opposing the recently enacted New York State gun. Mr. Saber.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everybody. Last month, I started presenting to you some, sorry, I don't usually need a microphone. I used to use one. I started presenting to you some statistics regarding our child protective units. There are 3 different metrics that we're tracking. And one of the things that I'm very interested in looking at are our trends, going back to the beginning of 2021 to see where we're at. So. Okay, so the first one, is kind of familiar, similar to last month's. Talking about the percentage of workers with more than 15 CPS investigations. The month of March, our percentage was 68% of our staff had more than 15 investigations. We were able to bring that down to 63% over the last month, with a reduction of 5%. The state average for bringing their this in line was a 1.5% change. So while we are still above the state average where we want to be, we are moving the right direction faster than the average of the other counties across the state. I think that that's a good thing. There's a number of things that go into that, in terms of getting some people moved into the positions, not in the training pool that we need to have, as well as some concerted efforts by our CPS staff to get some of these older investigations closed out. So that would be the first metric that I would like to discuss. We are moving in the right direction. If you can see the dotted line, the very finely dotted line, that is a trend. So going back to January 21st, or sorry, January 2021, our trend has gone steadily down, but we're moving in the right direction towards the right. The next tab I would like to take a look at would be the percentage of overdue investigations. This is very much attached to the one we just looked at. In the month of March, we were at 48% of our investigations were overdue. And in the month of April, we were at 46%. That's a 2% increase, or 2% improvement, I should say. Statewide, the improvement was 0.7%. And actually, there's 0.7% in the other direction. So they got 0.7% worse. So while this is something that we are working on, that we are going to continue to work on, we're moving in the right direction. But while the trend line, as I said last month, is actually looks like it's going in the wrong direction. If you were to go back to August of 2021 and extrapolate the data from there to today, you would see a much different line. And from that point forward, our staff have been doing an excellent job bringing that trend in the direction it needs to go. So I do believe that we are moving in the right direction with that. The last tab that I would like to discuss is our percentage of timely safety assessments. I would like to give kudos to everybody in the child protective unit. We are at 98%, up 2% from last month, which was 96%, which was already outstanding. Staff have been working hard. They put new procedures in place over the last year and a half to make sure that we are always on top of this. Safety is our paramount concern. We're continuing to improve in that area. So it was my goal to get 100%. Not quite there yet, but 98% is a good place to be. And that 2% improvement from last month is moving in the right direction. So I did want to bring your attention to those since we did discuss them last month and to kind of discuss those trends.
Question. Comment.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Next item is a resolution opposing the recently enacted New York State gun package. consisting of 10 bills identified as, and I'll go through them. Assembly 1023A, Senate 4970A. This one is Assembly 6716A, Senate 89B. The next, Assembly 7926A, Senate 4116A. The next, 7865A, to the Assembly, Senate 4511A. The next, Assembly 10428A, Senate 9229A. The next 10497 Assembly, Senate 9407B. The next 10501, the Assembly, Senate 9465A. The next, excuse me, no A, 9465. The next 10502 for the Assembly, Senate 9113A. The next, the Assembly 10503, Senate 9458. And the last, the Assembly 10504, Senate 9456. And calling upon the state of New York to adequately address the fundamental cause of mass shooting. The motion to move this by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Ms. Kerr and Mr. Akers. Mr. Akers, do you want to address this?
Certainly. Well, it's another emotionally filled legislation. This time it wasn't at midnight, but it was in the broad daylight. Overwhelmingly and unhinged reaction to the shootings in Buffalo and then Uvalde, Texas, which only these laws make it is a burden actually for those that obtain guns and are responsible gun owners. The Second Amendment, quite clear, is an individual right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So one of the things, first thing is they raise the age to 21. You can vote at 18. You can serve in the military at 18. At age 15 or 16 in this state and other states, you can change your sex without actually notifying your parents. And if you look at the burdens of one of the legislations on the gun dealers, it will wipe out many of the gun dealers, and maybe that's the motivation. It starts out that firearms must be locked in a safe at the end of every workday. So not just the storeroom itself, but actually would be removed from display and actually put into a safe. Ammunition must be stored separately, kept away from customers. The shop must have a functioning security alarm system with a 24-hour third-party monitoring, not you monitoring, third-party monitoring. And the video cameras must record the points of sale and all entrances and exits. Video from the security cameras must be maintained for 2 years. The gun shop staff and owners will be required to provide annual training on gun laws, process for documenting gun sales and transfers, and how to identify fraudulent, suspicious, or potentially dangerous customers and report them. Gun store employees must also be 21 years old. And the definition of a semi-automatic is actually, I don't see the definition of it. Would that be what we're referring to, is commonly referred to as an assault rifle, or would it be referred to a 22? Ruger 22 has the ability to shoot 10 shots individually triggered. It seems as though they don't, that's not defined. The red flag laws, basically, we had red flag laws, and these are actually even more intrusive with actually no due process. Due process is part of the Constitution. The other thing is that actually requiring social media companies to basically report on this and that, which would essentially be censoring free speech. Another one of the laws is about microstamping, which the technologically is very improbable. In other states, I think California has that, and the manufacturers can't do it. The problem is that what we have here in society here now is we've created a culture of lawlessness. It's where we treat criminals like they're a victim based on where they grew up, what their skin color is. We've had right across the nation for many years now about the ability to defund the police, where basically before you had in New York City, you had police units, anti-gun units, police that would go out and they would actually go into these neighborhoods where there's a lot of gun violence and actually stop individuals and actually question them to determine, and many guns were taken off the street. Another issue is cash bail. Cash bail has allowed perpetrators to actually commit a crime, go out and do it again in the afternoon, next day, and on until finally something is violent enough or political enough that these individuals are remanded to jail. So a Gallup poll that was recently done, that 88% of those who own a gun, they own the gun for protection from crime. Black customers bought 58% more guns than they did in the first half of 2020 than they did in the year before. The blacks in this country are more likely to be in urban environments where there's less police, less restriction. And a good example is the two Supreme Court cases earlier, the Heller case, which was in Washington, D.C. That was a black woman who feared for her life from a 7-foot-tall black man who was actually a drug dealer who was trying to break into her home. She wanted the ability to have a pistol. That was real in her favor. And in the case in Chicago, was a retired black man who wanted to protect himself from gangs that were actually operating in the city, and he wanted to protect himself. The average age of a mass shooter in this country is 34. So by raising the age to 21 for somebody to purchase or have a license to actually have a gun is not going to stop that mass shooter. I mean, the reality is in an article, and the article is titled "The Common Denominator of Violence," and it's fathers who abandon children. In virtually every case of violence in America, the assailant had no present or functional father. And the strongest link between every social and cultural problem is irrefutably absentee fathers. And it goes on to list, it's really striking, the latest data on the importance of fathers. 90% of all homeless and runaways come from fatherless homes. 85% of fatherless children exhibit behavioral disorders. 85% of youth in prison come from fatherless homes. 75% of adolescents being treated for drug abuse are from fatherless homes. 75% of adolescent patients in substance abuse centers don't have involved dads. 75% of rapists motivated by misplaced anger don't have a dad while growing up. 71% of all high school dropouts don't have a father. 70% of juveniles in state-regulated institutions come from fatherless homes. 63% of the youth who commit suicide do not have a father in the home. 57% of the fatherless homes are in Black households. 31% are Hispanic. 20% are white. They don't list Asians, I think, because mostly fathers are. So these are striking things. Yesterday was two important days: Father's Day, and actually Juneteenth, which is a very important day in Texas and has been a holiday for 40 years. All of these laws here that were rapidly knee-jerk applied here and voted on don't concentrate on what the true problem is in our society, and that is no fathers in the homes. All it does is restrict law-abiding citizens, responsible gun owners, from enacting their Second Amendment rights.
Wow. Mr. Smithers?
I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Noted. Well, Mr. Denisha?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've written a few notes down. I agree with much of what Mr. Akers stated earlier. looking at the new gun laws, I think it's a mixed bag. There are a couple in there, in my opinion, that actually make some sense. Because there are persons who should not have access to any type of firearm, any type of legal weapon. However, I believe most of the laws are not practical. Some of them even border on nonsense. It's my belief that the elected officials in Albany who supported this legislation were more interested in getting something passed that had the appearance of addressing gun violence than actually trying to do something to fix the situation. It's more legislation aimed at lawful firearms dealers and owners. Why? Because they're the easiest targets. All laws and legislation in the world aren't going to modify the behavior of people bent on violence until there are clear and deliverable consequences for their actions. Legislation simply makes the lives of law-abiding firearms dealers and owners more difficult and fits the anti-gun agenda. Some data that I'd like to share with you, you can do it as you will. This is the most recent data. During an average year in New York State, 870 people die in gun-related incidents. New York State has the 48th highest rate of gun violence in the United States. Meanwhile, the Center for Disease Control reported that in 2019, in New York State alone, there were 78,587 legal abortions. So my question is the statement, the intentional taking of innocent lives, whatever the meaning, it's immoral. But I find it ironic that we live in a society where the implement used for committing a crime, as you say, a gun versus a scalpel, receives more attention than the results. Taking a life is taking a life, no matter how you spin it.
Mr. Sheriff.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be added as co-sponsor. Also, I would like to say that the reason I'm going to vote for this resolution is it's simple. Those are the few words in the law that says presented by the court fathers, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. That says it all. This is a law. These laws here that are now that we're looking at this resolution, all these numbers. Be interested to know whether this is a bipartisan group. Maybe there's someone here that knows that, or is it not a bipartisan group? Maybe it's both parties, or is it just a faction in New York City? People who are representing the Senate, the Assembly, coming up with these ideas. But so I'm going to support the resolution.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. I'd also like to thank Mr. Akers and Mr. Denisha. I think the response was great. I'll try not to duplicate it. What we need to do right now is enforce the laws we have on the books. We don't do that. Chicago, one of the toughest gun laws in the country, and they have the most crime. It doesn't work. Criminals are criminals. They're not going to obey the law. All they're doing is making criminals out of honest people. It's not the gun that kills. It's the person. I mean, if you want to say it's the gun, well, when somebody dies from being hit from a car because somebody's texting or drinking or on the phone, take the cars away too. I mean, if we're going to do it correctly. You know, and as far as being 18, You can die for your military at 18. I won't go on because Mr. Akers already hit that, but I think as a society, we've lost our moral values and we got to come back to that. It's people that are killing. It's a people problem, not a gun problem. I'll be supporting this resolution. Thank you.
Ms. Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last part of the resolution title is really talk about calling upon the state of New York to adequately address fundamental causes of mass shootings, as well as all the other murders. It's not normal to want to harm people who do that are usually either in a fit of rage or very mentally ill and have illnesses that they don't. I'd like to see them spend more money trying to help people that are mentally ill and addressing the fact that many of the laws that are starter criminal activity aren't being punished or addressed. By the time that you go get a gun and decide that you're gonna mow down a bunch of people at a school, there's other things that you know, other places you could have been intercepted along the way, but we just have stopped holding people accountable for the other things that they do. I read one study where it said that many of the people that even kill individuals, they've assaulted them without a weapon prior to eventually getting a weapon and finishing them off. So it's something that we have to admit that we have a huge mental health issue. And we have to help the people that have this long before we get into these.
Anyone else? Ms. Terminelli.
I believe Mr. Burke had his hand up first, so I will let him go and then I'll follow up.
Mr. Burke.
I'll be supporting the resolution, but I do think that that second from the last, be it further resolved, that the state calling upon the state of New York to enact meaningful reform to tackle the problem. I guess what I would like to say is that maybe we should give them some ideas as to what meaningful reform would look like. I mean, Kevin said it's fatherless homes. Rita said it's mental health, and maybe it's a combination of all of them. But I think as we send this message down to Albany, it would be good to give them some ideas as to what we think meaningful reform would look like. Again, I'm going to support it.
Ms. Terminelli.
So I'm having a hard time supporting this resolution, and it's not because I agree with the legislation that has been passed that is aiming to challenge the use of the rights to own and bear guns. I understand, but some of these resolutions or some of these bills that have been passed actually to do with that. One of the mental health is really where we need to put our efforts. But one of the things that they found with many mass shootings that have happened, it's the sense, they want to be celebrated and sensationalized for it. And social media has become such an outlet where people do that. So as the resolution stands, I really can't support it, but if we could uncouple some of those Second Amendment and keep those in there and then take out the social media, people shouldn't, and I understand that we have a freedom of speech, but I shouldn't be able to go onto social media and threaten to walk into an elementary school or some other place and harm people and not have to suffer any consequences at all. There has to be limitations on public safety when it comes to things like this. We've got schools right now, we've got kids that are afraid to go to school, teachers that are afraid to go to school. And some of these things could have been prevented, not from the guns, because I do agree if people have intent to harm, they're going to figure out a way to do it. But these could have been, many of these could have been, there were hints out there. People talked openly about some of these acts of senseless tragedy and crimes openly before they committed them and nothing was done about it. So if if we could separate those out, I'd be willing to support it. But as a package of 10, which the 6 that mentioned the social media aspect of it aren't addressed in the resolution anyways. They're just listed in the heading.
Anybody else? Mr.
Just to comment on social media, or even actually the red flag laws. It's very difficult to determine if violence is going to take place. So say I'm playing in a hockey game, and I've had this happen before, but somebody will say, you do that again, I'm gonna kill you. So underneath this red flag law, I could report that individual, that this guy threatened to kill me, we were playing hockey, yeah, I slashed him from behind or tripped him or whatever, but that's very subjective. The fact is that this guy threatened to kill me. And so I report him, they go to his house, they take his guns and maybe his father's guns. And so we're gonna send a law enforcement individual to somebody's house to actually take these guns, and they aren't even directly involved. There's going to be problems with that. And I think we're gonna have law enforcement officers getting shot. There are these red flag laws that are there now are very intrusive. The problem is due process. It's he shed, and this really just opens it up for any particular comment. The thing with the social media, it's not really directly related to this specific bill, but there, amazingly, when freedom of speech is one of our amendments, is the first amendments, that there are on a national level, on a state level, processes in place to try and limit that speech. And really the best thing for actually harmful free speech is more free speech for available to everybody to detract from those claims or what somebody's making. The idea that we would have a misinformation panel, how dangerous that is would be, depending apparently on what side of the aisle you're on. So that's what I look into that. I mean, it's a mess. The fact that they would put these 10 bills together within 48 to 72 hours just shows you about the value of the same thing in the SAFE Act. Now in one of these where something that was legally purchased, it's in here, that now is going to be illegal. It's not going to stop a criminal from taking a 10-round container to another 10-round container so they have 20 shots available. A criminal is going to do what he's going to do. Goes right back to what Ms. Curran said. Obviously, these 2 individuals in Buffalo and actually Uvalde, Texas, had mental issues. I don't know where the parents were. I don't know if there were 2 parents in the home for the individual in Buffalo, but the guy made several trips to Buffalo. Like, where were the parents, like, wondering where he went? Kid was 18. He'd actually, under the existing red flag, he should have been prevented from purchasing a gun. Obviously, whoever was in charge of that dropped the ball. Some bureaucrat dropped the ball. And we see that all over. So the balance of these 10 laws, what they do is they infringe on our Second Amendment rights, and they make criminals out of law-abiding citizens. That's the problem. So it's an overreach. It's not thought out, and the effort should be towards actually the short term, definitely mental health interventions for these individuals. They're spotted by the teachers, they're spotted by neighbors, that maybe they can get some help there, rather than we start doing a knee-jerk reaction and removing guns from law-abiding citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Anybody else that has this one? Ms. Curran?
Can we have a roll call vote on this?
You can, when we get ready to roll. Anybody else wish to address? Right. Go ahead, Mr. Schneider.
I think you made a good point there, Kevin, that reminds me of what happens quite often is the majority gets punished for the actions of a few. And that's what this is. And you hit on that, and I think that's a very good point. Certainly, there were indications of some trouble. And I think part of the problem is when somebody turns 18, record was whatever it is. It's not made available. It's covered up for something that they did or some actions when they were younger, say 15 or 16. And that's happened in a few cases. And I think that legally that needs to be taken a look at. That doesn't go away. Something that you did when you were 16, when you turned 18 automatically.
Thank you. Anybody else? Let me weigh in for just a second. If you take a look at the third whereas, it says the stated purpose of these bills was to deter future heinous mass shootings, such as that perpetrated by a lone gunman in Buffalo, New York. There is absolutely nothing in any of these 10 laws, with the exception perhaps of one of them, that does make a futile attempt at trying to quell this kind of violence. But there's nothing in any of those laws that would go to deter future heinous mass shootings. These people and the ones that have been identified as being the shooters, you know, I think 9.9 of them out of 10 have social problems. They have mental problems, and add to that where we have gone with the laws, not only in the state of New York but in the country, where no bail. It's a joke to some of these people where they can go out and get arrested time after time after time after time. And they have shown, as a matter of fact, that some of these crimes go from, you know, on the scale of things, relatively minor to some pretty heinous crimes that are described in here. The last thing I'd like to address is I have a mayor in Chicago that has my same last name, of which I'm ashamed of for her. And Ms. Curran gave me some figures the other day that reflected on where these crimes are being committed. And most of them are in metropolitan areas that have Democrat mayors. I don't care which party the mayors are associated with, but I think it goes to the thought process of one of the parties, in that we can handle these things by giving in. We give in by taking bail away. We give in by taking away the rights of prisons to have solitary confinement. There are so many things that we are giving up. And now we can't even get the FBI to react to a threat to kill a Supreme Court justice. That we can't get the FBI to do something against the Black Lives Matter out in Seattle, but we can go after a bunch of fools that broke into our, people's house and caused some damage, and lock all them up and put them in solitary confinement. Where the hell are things going? And we wonder why we can't prevent these kinds of things. We can't prevent them because there's no easy answer. And these people in Albany and in Washington are looking for the easy answers. And the easy answers are to handcuff people with regard to their ability to possess and utilize as a safety means weapons that can kill. Is there anybody else want to comment? Roll call vote, please.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Akers.
Yes.
Hey,
Yes.
Haggard,
No.
Siapa,
Yes.
Bert,
Yes.
Arcot,
Yes.
Terminelli,
No.
Curran. Yeah. Reagan,
Yes.
12 yes, 2 no, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. County Administrator for the vacancy review committee.
So we have 2 departments to present tonight. The first is social services. Hello, Joe. There are 6 to be considered.
Good evening again. We have 6 vacancies in the Department of Social Services. Before I present the vacancies, I would like to say that 5 of the 6 vacancies that we have, we did not lose those individuals. They transferred or took promotions and stayed with the department. So only 1 of these vacancies represents a person leaving the department. So I think that's some good information to have. So, first vacancy that I have is a social welfare examiner for our TA SNAP unit. This individual took promotion to become a senior social welfare examiner at DSS. This position were not filled. State mandated deadlines for processing applications and recertifications would be missed. And clients would not receive the benefits to which they are entitled in a timely manner. Additional errors would also occur, resulting in payments of inaccurate amounts. It would require significant staff time to correct. Our examiners are responsible for interviewing clients applying for temporary assistance, supplemental nutrition assistance programs. They determine eligibility, complete recertifications, maintain ongoing TA and SNAP cases to meet state mandated deadlines, processing TA and SNAP applications and recertifications, and ensure our clients receive all the benefits to which they are entitled in a timely manner. It would be impossible to have the remaining examiners observe the work of this position without missing deadlines and failing to ensure that clients receive the accurate amount of benefits. This examiner is responsible for interviewing, documenting, and determining eligibility for 30 applications monthly for ongoing family assistance, safety net assistance, emergency assistance, including temporary housing assistance, or shelter emergency energy emergencies, and also SNAP. Examiner position currently is responsible for maintaining approximately 27 TA cases and 326 SNAP cases, serving approximately 617 individuals. I would like to request that this position be filled.
Questions? On the TA staff position? Okay. Next one?
The next position is a social welfare examiner for our daycare unit. This individual transferred from daycare and is now working in support investigations. If this position were not filled, state mandated deadlines for processing applications and recertifications would be missed. Clients would not receive all the benefits to which they are entitled in a timely manner. Additional errors would occur, resulting in payments for inaccurate amounts that would require significant staff time to correct. Examiners are responsible for determining eligibility, completing recertifications, reviewing requests, maintaining ongoing reimbursement payments, ensuring our clients receive all the benefits to which they are entitled in a timely manner. It would be impossible to have the remaining examiners absorb the work of this position without missing deadlines and failing to ensure that clients receive adequate benefits. This examiner is responsible for interviewing, documenting, determining eligibility, and reviewing reimbursement requests for 148 children of 85 families. The monthly payments are between $11,000 and $26,000. Effective August 2022, there was an increase in family income of 300%, the state income standard from 200% previously. To determine family eligibility for child care assistance and removal of the 17.5-hour work requirement for recipients attending a post-secondary education program. This increase will produce a higher caseload for the unit. And I would like to request that this position be filled.
Questions on the position?
The next position is social welfare examiner from a Medicaid unit. The staff member took a promotion and is now working also in our support investigation unit. This community Medicaid social welfare examiner position is needed to comply with deadlines set by regulations to determine eligibility for various mandated Medicaid programs in connection with initial applications and recertifications, and where there are household changes. In January of 2020, the caseload for this type of examiner was 480 cases. Currently, the caseload size is approximately 1,135 cases. In addition to the increased caseload size, the cases retained by the department at this time are the most complex Medicaid cases. The community Medicaid social welfare examiners are struggling to handle the large and complex caseloads. Not filling this position would have a negative impact on program integrity and timeliness of eligibility determinations. It would increase the risk of financial penalties for non-compliance. And I'd like to request that this position be filled.
Questions on Medicaid? Amber? Okay.
The next position is also a social welfare examiner for Medicaid. This individual has taken employment in in our own employment unit at DSS. This community Medicaid social welfare examiner position is needed to comply with deadlines set by regulations and determine eligibility for various mandated Medicaid programs in connection with initial applications and certifications when there are household changes. In January 2020, the caseload for this type of examiner was 480 cases. Currently, the caseload size for this examiner is approximately 740. In addition, the increased caseload size, cases retained by the department at this time are the most complex cases. Community Medicaid social welfare examiners are struggling to handle the large complex caseloads. Not filling this position would have a negative impact on program integrity and the timeliness of eligibility determinations would increase the risk of financial penalties for non-compliance. I would like to request this position.
Questions on that either? Okay.
Thank you. Our next position is an employment and training counselor. The position took a promotion to senior employment training counselor, so we kept the knowledge within you. This position, excuse me, we're not filled. The provision of adequate and timely services in the TA SNAP employment programs will be compromised. Temporary assistance and SNAP recipients in St. Lawrence County would not receive employment assistance at the level they need to successfully secure employment. It would not be consistently engaged in work activities. Participation and engagement are monitored for compliance so that cases will be closed timely and reduce county expense. This position is needed to provide mandated employment training services, temporary assistance, and supplemental nutrition assistance program recipients in St. Lawrence County to assess client skills, to develop individual employment plans, and to make referrals to services and activities. The person in this position is responsible for providing employment counseling, developing paid and unpaid work experience opportunities, conducting job readiness training, supervising job search activities, collaborating with other educational and human service providers to meet the education and development needs, assisting with funding for training and support services, monitoring medical work exemptions limitations, including medical health, alcohol, substance abuse treatment, maintaining records of client program information and activity in state databases, maintaining and recording client participation records, moving sanctions and case closings for noncompliance, and providing general employment information and guidance to recipients who are unemployed or underemployed. This position would work with approximately 120 clients, including many who are in need of significant individualized attention. And I would like to request that this position be filled.
There. Mr. Seymour, I have a question in regards to, where it says down in the justification, temporary assistance and SNAP recipients in St. Louis County would not receive employment assistance at the level they need to successfully secure employment. Would not be consistently engaged in work activities. How successful are we at that? And actually having people gain full-time employment.
I think we've actually been doing fairly well at that. I don't have statistics to that effect in front of me right now. I can get those for you. Did you know?
No.
I was gonna say, we can get those for us. Okay.
Other question? Okay.
The last position is a caseworker in our Child Protective Services unit. This individual resigned and took a job with the county public health. Caseworker and Child Protective Services investigate allegations of child abuse and maltreatment in St. Lawrence County that are made in the state central register. With this position, we're not feeling the impact of compromised child safety and reduce the ability of CPS to maintain a high standard set by the Department of Social Services and the state to ensure the safety of children in St. Lawrence County. While the Office of Children and Family Services recommends 15 active investigations for CPS caseworker per month, the average caseload size in CPS is 24 as of April 2022. Not filling the CPS position further delays the existing timeline of approximately 5 months from the first day of work to the time the caseworker can initiate reports and pending the significant training requirements, including 6 weeks when they are completely out of the office for training. Cases must be initiated within 24 hours. So virtually all the reports require face-to-face contact with families within 24 hours. Without adequate staff to fulfill this requirement, staff is required to work overtime in cases that require immediate contact due to health and safety concerns. Further, supervisors will be working with case workers to fill the gap and will be unavailable to supervise their coworkers. Due to the increased severity of cases, specifically cases involving caregivers who are using heroin and methamphetamines, additional face-to-face visits, time preparing for court, casework counseling, referrals to follow up is not required. Cases are becoming more complex, and our caseworkers are finding children in dire situations on a daily basis. This position is mandated, necessary to the regulatory requirements to ensure the health and safety of children and families. I would like to request that this position be filled.
Questions, concerns?
Just to be clear, on these 6 vacancies that we're looking for, you said 5 of the employees that were in there are still employed in St. Lawrence County.
5 of them stayed with DSS, the other one stayed with St. Lawrence County Public Health.
All 6 are still employed.
Yes, sir.
That's actually improved.
Any other questions for the commissioner? Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, everybody.
And the last 2 other vacancies this evening are from public health. I believe Jolene's with us virtually. Jolene, go ahead.
Thank you. So our first one is for a community health educator, and this is due to a resignation. They are leaving county employment. So the community health educator is our primary media liaison. They also do most of the education that comes out of our department for all of the different programs. It is an Article 6 requirement that our health department does conduct public health marketing and communication activities to promote accurate and evidence-based education within the community. So we are asking for an immediate fill for this position.
Questions on the educators? Okay. Second one?
And so this one is for a public health specialist, and this one is being vacated due to a promotion. So the public health specialist is a position for this specific one that works on our community health assessment and our Bridges to Wellness Coalition, along with our overdose grant. So they work in conjunction with a lot of our different community partners and focus primarily on our Article 6 requirements that go towards education as part of a community health assessment and improvement plan. We are asking for an immediate fill with this one as well.
Questions for Jolene? Okay, thank you, Jolene.
Thank you.
Move to the county administrator's report.
So a few items to provide you with an update this evening. First, I want to wish all fathers happy Father's Day yesterday, and certainly all those who take on the role of fathers for the people in their lives. From the COVID update perspective, we are at a community level of medium currently. I am encouraged to see the fellows program move forward. I think there has been some confusion, concern about how benefits and all those types of things would work out. I think the partnership with the St. Lawrence Health Initiative will also be positive in terms of providing that additional marketing and education. I do want to just mention, Jolene and I talked more today. Board of Health, I believe, meets tomorrow night. We were looking to conclude the biweekly, so Monday and Thursday currently reporting at the end of June, once school has completed for the year. and move to monthly reporting. And so what that would look like is we would collect the data still, so public health would still have a responsibility to gather the information both from the hospitals and from the state. What we would do is collect that for the entire month, and that first week and the following month that would be shared. So we have a complete month's data to provide to the public, to all of you, to give you that information. Certainly, if the situation changes or the dynamics of the reports that are coming in change, that also is always provided to us by the state, by the CDC. So I think we have an opportunity here to reduce that reporting to monthly. I wanted to share with you the transfer of funds with regards to the sheriff's office. As you may recall, I'm required to report out to you transfers of funds between the 200s and the 400 accounts. There was a transfer of $455. This was associated with acquisition of mobile data tablets. And between the time the quote was provided and the purchase occurred, the quote had changed, as we're seeing many things that we're purchasing these days. So I did want to make you aware of that. Next week, the Bonadillo Group and their staff will join us to present the agency review. As part of the ongoing effort to improve the work of Children's Services, we also hope to have an update for you on the investigative piece following that update. Next month at Services, as you heard our senior caseworker reference the year of the positions, we're coming up also on a year of sharing the monthly reports with you. So what we'd like to prepare is a year in review of some of the things that we've noted. We'd also like to, as I've mentioned all along, keep this a living, breathing document so that we improve the information you're receiving and we continue to improve upon the eligibility side, which, as you know, all these months you've seen 1 page of eligibility and 7 pages of social services. We'd like to share with you, condense some of that and share with you some more of the eligibility information. We believe, as you're hearing from the department, a lot of information could be quantified and shared with you at the monthly meetings, but also if there's information you're looking for or that you're being asked about, we certainly are going to pull that together and present that to you. In keeping with board policy, next week I'll bring recommendations for the reserves. Last month in May, you heard our unaudited results. I'd like to bring you both recommendations for reserves as well as uses of those unaudited results. This will include a fund balance policy recommendation for 23 as we're beginning to ramp up. Budget entry training has just taken place again, and we'll start the entry process and discussions about projections for this year very soon. But to that end, Fiscal Stability and Audit Committee will meet next Monday at 4:30 prior to this meeting. And I believe we're going to be meeting across the street, but I will confirm that by email. An update to you on the bond rating. I think I referenced in our previous committee meeting, we were scheduled for that bond rating. We have been affirmed an A+ rating with a stable outlook. And I just wanted to share with you briefly, there were four points that were referenced in our report that I will be sharing. Okay, so those included. But also finance authorized the balance that will be coming out of fund balance with regard to our bond. So you may recall I communicated with you by email of a reduction in the request for financing to go from 6 million to 3 million. And so the balance of that would come from fund balance. You also remember that we are paying for one of our outposts already with our fund balance. This would provide for 2 of those and financing just for 1. So we'll bring that resolution to you. Potsdam location was turned over on June 1st in good shape according to our contractor, and we have started the work to prepare that site. Certainly just from a standpoint of the treasurer and of myself, we were pleased with the affirmation. We were hoping for an upgrade, but certainly the conditions at this time with the economy are a little bit more problematic than we would have anticipated going into the holiday. Just in matter of others, and I'll report that to you. I don't know why I can't find it at the moment. Since November, our emergency services has been out in the community, sharing information, gathering information from community members about the emergency services in the county. I'll be meeting with them this week to go over that information and their assessment, as well as organize for the advisory board and board of legislators the information some of you participated in, but also certainly the information going back to the emergency services advisory board. So that'll take place this week. Some good news wanted to share. You all have a copy of the program in your mailboxes from social services. They held their annual recognition ceremony last week, and our new commissioner and staff organized a different approach to this. So typically, we would hold this in the basement of social services, and we would share a brief moment of some refreshments and move along. Well, with some staff over there, I think putting up a change in the environment, the recognition ceremony was outside, and lunch was provided for the staff, not only who were being recognized, but we saw most all of the staff come out, at least that were here and not in the field in court that day, to share some lunch prepared by surgeons. So the surgery staff came a little early and made a nice lunch for the staff over there. So that was really enjoyable. Our chairman and our services committee chairman both joined the festivities, and they were, what I believe, very well received by the department. So changing it up, I think, was well appreciated by the department. On Thursday, we'll be in Lake Placid for a follow-up on the mediation with regards to the land claims. And later this week, the ARPA committee will be scheduled to meet with the IDA. I believe you received that update that the economic development component that they will be managing, they have been able to meet as a board and come up with a process that they're going to recommend. So the ARPA committee will meet and be able to bring that back to you. Also, the last week, so next Tuesday, I'll be meeting with our forester and our soil and water conservation district manager to go over the reforestation and the emerald ash borer issue with our trees to be taken down as a part of the ARPA funds. So all of that will be taking place over the next couple of weeks. Any questions?
Mr. Burke.
Ruth, any word on when the opioid drug settlement money will come in? And I have a second part of that question.
Sure. I believe I saw some communication that either one or two payments have been received and a third is expected within a very short period of time. So they have been set aside in a reserve so that we can determine the difference. As you're aware, there are some required uses of it and there are some optional uses for it. So I do believe we expect one more payment and some have arrived. I can get you those totals.
Yeah, that would be good. And I'm wondering, Ruth, has community services weighed in on what they'd like to see?
They have not yet, but I fully expect them to be involved in that determination.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Ruth.
Sure.
Mr. Akers.
Ruth, a timeline is you're possibly Thursday for the ARPA committee in
Correct.
Patrick Kelly. The time has not been established yet.
It has not.
So I just wanted to make Tony and Bill and Dan and Jim aware that no time has been set. You will send that out when you.
Yes, and I think important to note for Tony, we will be traveling, but I think we're going to send out a Zoom invitation so that we can log on.
Okay.
Any questions? I apologize. I'm trying to find them. Okay. So for now, I will read those to you if I find them. They're very short.
Moving to committee reports, we'll start from Mr. Akers and the Board of Health.
So as Mrs. Doyle stated, Public Health will be meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock on Zoom, which would mean that for 2 years and 3 months now, we have not met, 27 months at least. I hope to ask the question about the vaccination of those under the age of 5. There's been roughly 400 individuals under the age of 5, according to the CDC, that have died from COVID. And I was unable to find how many of those 400 had comorbidities. But the fatality rate for individuals under the age of 5 is 0.0004. But you're welcome to attend on Zoom, 6 o'clock tomorrow night.
Wow. The CDP Board of Directors, Mr. Sheridan.
Mr. Chairman, I have no report, seeing how that the director of CDB was here last week on Monday night, gave us a full report explaining how CDB.
Ms. Haggard, Community Services Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Community Services Board met on June 7th. I'll give you a few highlights from that. Rebecca Mauer gave an update. Lots of progress has been made on the clinic, the opioid clinic. It had verbal approval from the DEA, which is great. They have their OASIS certificate. Holistic window is on back order, so that might, it's not going to affect the approval process, but we'll need that for the opening. And the security system's been installed. She gave a whole lot more information on that. I had mentioned before the new 3-digit dialing code 988 will be available. That's for people who are in crisis, and it's a general number. That's going to start up on July 16th of this year. Calls will be routed to the regional call center, which is in Syracuse for us, and we'll utilize the 211 information to determine resources available in this area. Lindsay Best and Jay are going to review the 211 site to be sure that the list is up to date for the in this area. There was an update from the people over at Citizens Advocates, and they have 60 people on their caseload right now. They're doing great, getting up to speed. The program I mentioned before, step by step, at the Lincoln School Housing Project has been delayed until August 1st. Telehealth temporary regulations have been extended 120 days. The Claxton Hepburn Children's Unit is open and currently has 8 of 12 beds filled. That was a great need. And Governor Hochul has announced a $4.5 million in addiction services aid, and Seaway Valley has been awarded $150,000 for a 3-year period. We meet again on Tuesday, July 5th.
Thank you. Next, the Office for the Aging Advisory Board, Mr. Nation.
Chairman, Office for the Aging Advisory Council met last Tuesday, June 14th at 10 a.m. at the building on 310. Some things of interest, the Office for the Aging is still looking for volunteers for home delivered meal routes. If you've got a day, a couple hours, if there's anyone that's got a little bit of free time, they certainly could use it. The list continues to grow. There are still people that are on the waiting list. They're not able to be served. The senior picnic is going to be held August 11th at the Governor Senior Center this year. Registration is from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. We'll be serving dinner from 11:30 to 12:30. Music will be provided from 12:30 to 2:30. And urging all elected officials or anyone who's running, whether you're already elected or not, to come and the picnic and help serve. And come to the picnic. You need to be prepared to serve. Not just stand around. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, you have a question?
Yes, I do. The facility in Governor for the senior citizen meals, to the best of my knowledge, is still not serving any location for takeout only. Do you have any anticipated time of when this will change to enable senior citizens to go in and eat?
Yes, sir.
I do not know. We had that discussion last Tuesday. We've got a couple of the nutrition centers that are in the same boat, and what a lot of it comes down to is staffing. It's difficult, we're short-staffed as it is, it's difficult to staff all the locations. And there are some of the locations that have very little usership, I guess. So that's something that's still under discussion.
Ms. Hager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could ask Mr. Denisha, that was August 11th?
Yes, August 11th.
And what time should people be there if they want to come to?
Well, registration is from 10 to 11.
10 to 11?
And dinner will, they plan on serving dinner beginning at 11:30.
Okay.
So I would suggest anyone that's going to be there to serve dinner, be there at least by 11. So the staff has got an idea just to head count.
Thank you.
Ms. Terminelli, the Youth Advisory Board, please.
Thank you, sir. So the Youth Advisory Board, the allocations committee members are currently reviewing applications for sports-based youth programs. We will be receiving funds from OCFS for those youth sports and education opportunity fundings for the 2022 programs, and they're holding pretty steady with the funding allocation amount. It's a little over 106,000. Our teen ambassadors will be meeting in person. They have never met in person since we started the youth committee teen ambassadors. They'll be meeting in person for the first time for the July meeting. And they'll be doing some team building activities with the counselors, camp counselors from 4-H Camp Overlook to celebrate a successful school year. The Youth Bureau is currently interviewing teens to fill the summer intern openings. That is 4 summer interns. They'll be working from July 11th until August 19th, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 4. And I believe it's $15 an hour. So they are working through that process of getting those kiddos onboarded. The application deadline will be Thursday, the 23rd for that. And then tomorrow night, our big event for the Youth Bureau is tomorrow evening. They'll be at Hubleton Central with WPBS Watertown, and they'll be viewing a 30-minute preview of the documentary Hiding in Plain Sight, which is about youth mental illness. It will air on PBS on June 27th and 28th. So this is just a 30-minute preview of that. They'll be facilitating an evening panel discussion with some adults who work with teens and 3 of the teen ambassadors. And this event is free and open to the public. And our next meeting is this Thursday at 3 p.m.
Question? Thank you, Ms. Sherman. Thank you. Moving on to old or new business. Is there any old or new business? Mr. Smith.
Have new business if there's no holds. Like the proposed resolution which you see on your desk, which says opposing Assembly Bill A7919 and Senate Bill S3908. It's called an act to amend the state finance law, the general municipal law, public authorities law, and the highway law in relation to enacting the New York State Buy American Salt Act.
Are you moving that resolution?
Yes.
Is there a second? Mr. Reagan. Discussion. Mr. Reagan.
First off, I want to thank Mr. Smithers and you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this forward. I think it's incredibly important that we urge the governor to block this bill, which is going to have a lot of unforeseen effects, and which is going to cause a great deal of economic harm, both here in St. Lawrence County, but across upstate New York. First off, this rock salt that's brought in to the Port of Ogdensburg is the single biggest commodity handled by the Port of Ogdensburg. Losing that contract, losing that rock salt that is brought in to help us clear our highways and make transportation safer during the winter months, not only will hurt and cost us jobs among the International Longshoremen's Association at the Port of Ogdensburg, but it's going to hurt a lot of local trucking companies. It's going to hurt a lot of Teamster drivers from across upstate New York. It's going to hurt a lot of CSEA truck drivers who work for municipalities. The Port of Ogdensburg, it serves not just Ogdensburg and St. Lawrence County, but it serves communities across upstate New York that are that need this salt in order to clear their roads and make driving safer during the winter months. What a lot of people don't realize, especially the people who are pushing this legislation, is that transporting these large commodities by ship is much less expensive than transporting them over the road. It's much greener by reducing the fossil fuel that are used to haul these vast amounts of road salt that are required here in upstate New York. And the Port of Ogdensburg has done a terrific job for as many years as I can think of in providing a central depot where communities across this part of upstate New York can come get the salt that they need and bring them back and help clear their roads. And this effort to, misguided effort to shift the business to a quarry somewhere else, I won't get into where it is. It is important at a time like this of rising costs to not add additional costs to our municipalities, to our business community, and not jeopardize the careers of truck drivers, both unionized and not unionized, who depend on to support the work. So thank you for bringing this up, and I hope everyone will join me in supporting it. And I, Mr. Chair, and I hope that our friends in the media who are watching this will be aware this is an important bill, and we need to get the state of New York to understand that they are not benefiting upstate New York through this kind of legislation that is going to have a lot of unintended consequences. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. As Mr. Reagan said, it's a majority of the income. The letter from Mr. Burns, Sam Burns, was that it's 80% of the income. Now, maybe Nicole Terminelli can tell us how much income is into the Port of Ogdensburg, but if this bill becomes law, the Port of Ogdensburg will shut down. This is 80% of their income is rock salt. Well, like I said, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Mr. Terminelli, is that something that you're comfortable with responding to?
I actually tried to raise my hand as soon as the resolution was brought forward. I need to recuse myself from discussion and voting on this resolution because of my position on the board.
Thank you. Ms. Haggard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is really important, and I really love what Mr. Reagan pointed out, all the facets, including the greenness of getting our salt from a shorter distance than where we have to get it the end of it. So, thank you.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes, I think you know, Mr. Chambers is available to answer a couple of questions. Okay, here's my question. Okay. What's the percentage of salt that we get? Where does it come from? And how long have we been getting it from that place? Where does it come from?
Yeah, well, each year we do go out to bid, St. Lawrence County in a cooperative bid with Franklin County, which basically all the municipalities buy off that bid. The majority of the time it's been coming from the Port of Ogdensburg. And it may not be coming from the same supplier. We do get it from different suppliers at sometimes, but the majority of the time it's been coming through the Port of Ogdensburg for St. Lawrence County and the municipalities of St. Lawrence County.
So would the origin be Canada or some other country like over in Europe, or what's the origin of the rock salt? You know?
I believe at some points we have had the origin be not from North America, but only a very small portion of it. It's usually North American rock salt.
And if it was restricted to just United States produced or mined, how far would we have to go to find a supplier?
It's likely would be the Finger Lakes region of New York, maybe Ohio, rather than Canada. But there has been domestic salt delivered to the Port of Ogdensburg as well. So it's not just Canadian salt, but it can be domestic salts as well.
So some of this salt does come from Canada, but you're not sure how much.
No, sir. That data would need to come from the port. I'm sorry, I don't have the origin of the materials, but the Port of Ogdensburg does play an important role in supplying salt to the municipalities and businesses in St. Lawrence County, and like I said, Franklin County and beyond.
Okay. I would agree with comments that you made, Legislator Reagan in particular. I don't think they've considered long-term effects of this, the effect that has on St. Lawrence County. And my question might be, is probably unanswerable, unless you do wish to comment, that this legislation is probably proposed with a singular rationale to protect somebody's home district or to further that, but not to the benefit of the majority of New York State. So I would urge all the legislators to support this, possibly even co-sponsor it, to send a firm message to Albany that it's going to have an effect on us, and particularly Port of Ogdensburg, if this is something that goes through.
Mr. Burke.
Sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand, but I think it's a great resolution, and I thank Harry for bringing it forward.
Anyone else? Ms. Curran?
Like to be added to the proposed.
So noted. Mr. Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just one last item, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor, and also I would urge our friends in Central Trades and the AFL-CIO to join us in this effort to block this legislation. I know in the past, the efforts to Buy American traditionally have exempted Canada in our in my work in the legislature, we have traditionally, because of our, so much of New York State's trade is with Canada, and because of the issues that would be caused by disrupting our supply chain by saying, oh, we can't buy this from Canada, we can't buy that from Canada, and then having reciprocal sanctions put on products that are produced here in New York State. Traditionally, the state legislature has exempted Canada from these kinds of Buy America provisions. And I know in my work with our friends across the border and within the state legislature, that's always been a priority. And I know Senator Ritchie voted no on this particular bill.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Sheridan.
Chairman, I'd like to be added co-sponsor as well. I'd like to direct a question to Jim Reagan.
Go ahead.
Jim, before this, are you saying that this resolution says that the state assembly and the Senate both passed this bill, but they're waiting for the governor's signature?
I don't know that for sure, but my initial review seemed to indicate that, but whatever state it's at, we need to block it. We need to get it blocked. And we need to call on whoever we can to get the governor to intervene and bring some common sense to this discussion.
Do you think that anyone has told the governor how devastating this is going to be for the city of Augsburg? Keep in mind, she just closed down the Augsburg Rec facility here a few months ago.
I don't know.
Chairman Elliott, do you have any information on that through the Bridgeport? On what the status of the bill?
On the status of the what?
On the status of the bill to authorize it.
The last that I looked at had been passed by both the House and the Senate and was waiting to be signed.
Thank you. Mr. Aker, I'm sorry. Are you done,
Yes,
Mr. Sheridan?
I guess time is of essence then, because she could be signing it tomorrow. I don't know whether I'd like to get this resolution out real quickly, and I'm hoping our senator and our assemblymen are going to be trying to sound the alarms down there, because it looks like this could very well happen sooner than later.
Mr. Aker.
Well, I'm just looking at the bill. Senator Timothy Kennedy is the sponsor. He's from Buffalo. George Borrello Senator Borrello is a co-sponsor. Senator Jacuti. All these individuals live in the Buffalo, Rochester area, which is where we get our salt here in New York State. So just like you said, Mr. Smithers, this is people lining their pockets of their constituents and the businesses in their area. And I think you're right, Mr. Reagan. I think Canada is exempt. I've been welding for the last 2 days. That steel's all from Canada that I bought from Jeffords. So maybe we can get our salt. This is a great example of actually people lining their pockets.
Anyone else? Reading the bill, we're down into it, you will find that there are exemptions to be granted statutorily within that bill. I would suggest maybe we all take a look at that and see what they are. Moving along, any other old or new bill? I'm sorry. But not. All right, so we're going to take a vote on the resolution if there's no more discussion on the resolution. And seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Recuse.
One recusal. Is there any other old or new business? Ms. Haggard?
Thank you. I don't know what this falls under, but I'll say new business. Once again, agreeing with Mr. Akers, you mentioned the importance of Juneteenth. In one day.
That took people a while to see the light.
Oh, yeah. He mentioned how important Juneteenth was along with Father's Day. We had a wonderful celebration in Potsdam for Juneteenth. And I know we looked at giving our employees this day off and it was negotiated and all that. One thing I want to point out is a lot of the kids were off school today. Even though we only have a week left of school, there were a lot of kids that didn't have school, and some of our employees, they had to work. I would suggest, and I've asked Ruth to kind of bring us up to speed. She's done some research ahead of me asking her that we perhaps should look at this. I was a resident of Texas for over a decade. I'm well familiar with it. It's a great holiday and it was a wonderful time on Saturday in Potsdam. And I wished I'd seen more people there. It was freezing cold. So missed out on that. But if you could fill in the board a little bit, Mrs. Doyle, about what your research shows in terms of people that have looked at this. And if you wouldn't mind.
Please do.
Sure. Very short, there's just been some communication amongst counties with regards to who is and who hasn't yet made a determination to recognize and provide a holiday on Juneteenth. So currently there are 2 counties reporting out of about 20, including St. Lawrence. There are 15 counties who have not taken action, 16 including St. Lawrence. There are 4 similar to, as Legislator Haggard describes, who have either been approached by the union or have an open contract that identified, much as St. Lawrence did, that if there are 12 holidays, if they were interested in talking about, much like you may recall, we changed election day for the day after Thanksgiving. Many counties that I just referenced there in the 15 are talking about trading out one for Juneteenth. One county has added a 13th holiday that I'm aware of. And one county has replaced a floating holiday with Juneteenth. Other than that, there's not been action. So many other county offices across the state were open today for business.
Anyone else for old or new business?
I do have the information. Sure.
Whoa.
I apologize. I'm not to have it right in front of me. The 4 areas that I mentioned to you in our standard reports, or commonly referred to as S&P, provided in our credit overview, for a stable economic profile supported by consistent growth in the tax base, good financial management policies and practices, and a strong institutional framework, consistently positive operating results leading to maintenance of high reserves, and low fixed costs with large unfunded post-employment liabilities. And you're aware in New York State we aren't able to fund our OPEB. But those are areas that were pointed out in the affirmation of our A+ state outlook.
Any comment? Okay. All right. You have any executive session?
To do so. And that is for personnel. For the, anybody want to recite it for me today? The medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, negotiations, and we do not have any appointments. And I would also make a request of the body to provide an opportunity for the treasurer and in full to join us for executive session if there's no objection.
Objection. No objection.
Move to go into executive session.
Second by Ms. Haggard, moved by Mr. Baker, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Committee, because we don't have our board meeting until July 11th, which is one of the latest because the 4th falls on a Monday. So if we needed that action to take place sooner, I could work with the chairman and get one scheduled and announced. Any questions?
No.
Okay.
We can do it this time?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Second. Adjourn, there's no new business.
Aye.